Hi everybody, welcome this evening to our episode. We've got two fantastic authors joining us on the show tonight. The focus for the show is professional learning and reading to support your new academic year. But before we'll let the authors introduce themselves. Mark, how have you been this week?
Yeah, really, really good. Thank you, Ollie. But don't you love the little countdown thing at the beginning? It's just like, I mean, it's not Carol of Alderman-esque, is it? You know, it's not that, is it? But it's just nice having that bit of tension, isn't it, before it all starts? I like it. Had a good week. How about you, Ollie? You're back into school now, aren't you? Students back in. How's it all going?
Yeah, it's going really well. It does feel a bit Star Wars-esque for me, I think, with the countdown. I love the background drop, but yeah, it's been really good actually. It's been really nice to see colleagues. You know, that's one of the hallmarks and benchmarks of teaching is relationships, as we know. Although our secondary students aren't in, it's just great to be in amongst our colleagues and to be able to have conversations with them, and just catch up. So it's really nice to have that. Back again, and I'm sure that when everyone else is in the same position, I know they'll feel the same way. So that's been brilliant to see.
Oh, awesome stuff. Big hello to everybody watching in from around the world, particularly our viewers in the United Arab Emirates. The focus for this show is supporting teachers, leaders, and those interested in education in the region. Really to have two fantastic educator authors joining us on the show this evening. Please do join in with the live chat. Please do say hello. If you've got any questions for either of the authors about the focus of the session this evening, thinking about professional learning and reading, then please do drop us into the live chat, whether you're watching on Twitter via Periscope or whether you're watching via our YouTube channel. Either way, we love to hear from you. And I suspect Mark Ryan's already sort of drumming up some interesting quip to keep us on our toes throughout the course of the evening. But thank you so much for joining us. And if you're watching back on the rerun, then please do stay tuned for some announcements towards the end of the show today about our next shows across the season 2, and also about our teaching and learning conference that we're having later on this term. Really excited to share more about that with you during the course of the show. Ollie, did you want to introduce our first guest for this evening?
Certainly, yeah, I will do. I'll just stick our little slide deck on and just say it's a great pleasure to welcome Sarah Mullin to the show. She's Deputy Head, award-winning educator and author of some books that we're going to delve into a little bit this evening. But I think it's only right that we let Sarah into the show now. So I'll take the slide deck down. Mark, if you'd like to invite her in, please.
Yeah, here we go. Here's Sarah. Hiya, Sarah. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And yourself?
Yeah, really good. I've been looking at your timeline on Twitter this week and seen you having some lovely views and a bit of a staycation. How was that for you? Looked lovely.
Oh, it was lovely. I was taking some of Kat's advice and looking after my own well-being before the term ahead.
Super duper. Well, listen, welcome to LearnLiveUAE. It's a real privilege to have you on the show, and thank you so much for giving up some of your little bit of holiday time that you've got left to join us this evening. For people viewing the show this evening, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your experience in education, and what inspired you to become a teacher? Is that okay?
Of course, yes. I'm Sarah Mullin. I'm from Solihull, which is in the West Midlands in England, but my family's all from Ireland. And I went into education because I grew up in a working class Irish family in South Birmingham. And my father worked in construction, and he worked ever such long hours. And he always used to say to us that education will change your life. And both of my parents were so passionate about working hard at school and having good grades so that the world could be your oyster. And they would say to us, do any job in the world you want to do, be anything you want to be, but don't let education be a restriction or a barrier to anything you might want to be in the future. And their other message too was, do anything you want to do in the world, but make sure you're doing it with passion and be the best that you can be in that particular role. And I was, so it was really my parents that pushed me. And I was the first in my family to go into education. And I wanted to become a teacher because I wanted to deliver that message to the students that I taught. So my first job was in a working class area in South Birmingham, and I went in the traditional route. So I started off as a secondary school English teacher, and then I worked my way up, became a deputy head of English, a head of English, an assistant head teacher, and now I'm a deputy head teacher. And that was in a range of schools in Birmingham and in London as well. And now I'm still learning as well, still studying. So throughout that, I did my master's in education. Now I'm doing a doctorate in education as well. So I really think those messages that were instilled in me at such a young age have really stuck through with me. Yeah.
It's sort of hearing all of the things that you're involved in and doing is, great to see that you're kind of living and breathing that love of learning that all teachers have. If we sort of delve into your first book then, What They Didn't Teach Me on My PGCE, there's so much advice in that book that's really brilliant for teachers that are new to profession. If you could distill all of that thought down to kind of one piece of advice, that if you could go back to your former self as an NQT, what's the one thing that you wish you could tell yourself?
I think I would probably tell myself, go at your own pace. And that can be either way. So quite early on in my career, I was a deputy head of English at about the age of, I think it was about 25, and I was head of English at 26, and I was on SLT in my early 30s. And I didn't know what the term imposter syndrome was then. But now, with the knowledge and the experience that I have, I can look back and think, actually, sometimes did I hold back from going for roles that I might have wanted to go to because I felt that I wasn't old enough, or perhaps related to gender or experience. So I think that's the one thing I'd say. I'd say be a bit braver, be a bit more confident, and if you're ready for something, go for it. Trust your gut instinct. But equally, I would say to NQTs, you're on a journey as well. So go at your own pace. And if you're not ready to go into leadership, or if you're not ready to take on more responsibility, that's absolutely fine too. Go with your own experience, your own feeling.
Yeah, no, I think that's some great advice there, really. And that idea of imposter syndrome that you mentioned before as well. So many teachers suffer from that. And what I found is that there's two things really that I found over the years in relation to that. One is, it depends on the sort of person that you are as to how you sort of react to that. I remember, for example, speaking at a Teach Meet, crikey, 15 or more years ago, and I stood up and presented, and I felt, like I'd heard some great ideas from some speakers who sounded really confident, and I hadn't really spoken in front of colleagues before much, and I stood up and I was sweating and stuttering and all these sort of things, and I presented, and there were only like 15 people. It was like the smallest Teach Meet I've been to, I think. The smallest one then and since. But I had this conversation with myself, because I was really concerned about how I was feeling about it. And I spoke to a colleague of mine who's written a fantastic book as well, actually, a really popular book called The Lazy Teacher's Handbook. He's a colleague of mine at the time called Jim Smith, and he's the author of that book. And he said, well, you can do one of a few things, really. You can run away from this stuff or you can practice it and get better. So we started organising our own Teach Meets as a means of doing those things. And so the advice I would sort of share alongside what you're saying there is teachers are such a supportive bunch. We see that through our PLN, through social media, through Twitter. I mentioned in our little sort of show chat with Kat, Kat and I, Kat Howard, our second guest, says Miss on Twitter. We've spoken many times over the years, on the phone even, and through social media. But people who use these sort of networks are so supportive, and you can choose to sort of run away from these things, or you can sort of turn it and flip it on its head and push yourself outside your comfort zone. But the final advice I would add to that really is about doing it when you feel comfortable too, because if you're not happy about doing stuff, you're not going to be able to sort of perform at your best, even if it isn't as practiced and polished. I don't know if that makes sense, but I've got a follow-up for you, questions related to your book. Dame Alison Peacock, quite a big figure in the field of education, big honcho at the Chartered College of Teaching. She said your book is a must-read for teachers everywhere. And there's more than 50 contributions inside your book, these narratives and things. Could you give us some Ollie sort of asked you to filter down some of the best advice for NQTs. But one of the things I love about the book, actually, I taught for more than 20 years, Sarah. So, but I learned new things. And it's like when you do a lesson observation, I find, regardless of the school, regardless of any lesson that you walk into, I always pick up a hint or a tip from a teacher, whichever school I work in, whichever classroom I walk into, whether it's a EYFS right through to year 13 or even FE and HE. So what I loved about the book was there's so much in there which is of relevance to me even this long into my profession. So with that in mind, could you give us sort of your top 5 pieces of advice that are sort of inside the book? There's so many great things in there, and I said, viewers, there's more than 50 different narratives sort of shared in this book from educators from all over the world. Can you give us your sort of top 5 bits from it within there? Is that okay?
Absolutely. I think one of the ones that really sticks out to me, it's by Dr. Thomas Seaton in America, and he wrote it as he was retiring. And he said he's got to the end of his career and he's been so focused the whole way through on end of unit assessments and where the children are going to, that sometimes we stop, or we forget to stop and just enjoy the now. And that really stuck with me. And it's something that I've passed on a lot of times since. Just enjoy those little wins that happen every moment and every day inside the classroom. It doesn't have to be an exam target or a tick on the list sort of thing. Really enjoy the now. So I think that's a really, really good one. Another one too is by Dr. Brendan, who's on Twitter, and he's fantastic. And he talks about the importance of kindness. I think that's really, really important, that, we're all in this job together, especially going into the term that we're going into right now. We're facing the unknown. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of fear. And what we need to do is we need to look after one another. And that's both within our own schools, but also within our community as well. So on social media, reaching out to local schools, just being a listening ear, sometime a critical friend perhaps, supporting one another. I think kindness is an underestimated but really, really valuable resource that we have in the schools. And as we move to this new normal, we need to think about new ways that we can do that as well. So I think that's a really, really good one. Another one as well would be by Emma Turner, and she talks about always learning. I think that's a really, really important one too, because I think actually when we qualify as teachers, yes, we get our QTS and we get our certificates, but the best teachers are always investing in themselves so that they're best placed to support our little learners. So anybody who's watching this evening, I mean, this isn't directed time. It's not part of your inset day. You're not being paid to come along and listen to this, but you're doing it because you want to be part of the dialogue around education. And you're clearly passionate about learning and growing and developing. And it's that curiosity and that passion that makes our teachers fantastic. And we'd want them to be, teaching our children, which is really good as well.
Agree with that.
Yeah, I'm going to pick chapter 10 and the whole of chapter 10, and that's what they didn't tell me about the funny times. And I'd say there's probably about 70 or 80 contributors to that chapter. So I put out a tweet on Twitter and I just said, what sort of things have gone wrong in the classroom? Tell me your funniest time, your biggest disasters. And the stories are hilarious. I think it's really good to read because as a new teacher coming into the profession, or even if you've been teaching for quite some time, it's okay to know we all have bad days, we all make mistakes, and it's how we respond to those days. So it's really important to reflect on what's happened. Obviously, take away what we can from it and learn how we process things or behave in a different way, perhaps moving forward. But also just to think, well, actually, this happens to everybody in their career. And we haven't got this far without a few bumps in the road along the way, because some days you just can't plan for them. If a wasp comes into the classroom, it can be quite challenging to get your children to focus and to get back onto the lesson as well. And there's a couple of stories about a teacher who took her class out for a science experiment. So she did her risk assessment, she'd done it all, she got it all planned, took the children outside for a science experiment. Coming back down, one of the children decided to like the look of something somewhere else, and then she left him up on the roof on the way down. I mean, just you just couldn't make it up, some of the stories, which are absolutely brilliant. And then I think I'm going to go back to what we were talking about earlier as well, and that's the importance of relationships. And that's come up, in fact, that's a recurring theme throughout the book. There's a whole chapter actually on it as well. And it's really important that school and children and parents and carers and external agencies work together collaboratively, putting the child's best interest first. I think the power of relationships in education between staff and between children and adults is really, really important. And once you get that right, you know, the rest all goes along harmoniously then. So those are my top 5.
Oh, I've got so many personal stories I can share. I'm going to come to Ollie in a second and ask him. I'll share one. And one of my favourites is that bit, what they don't teach you about keeping a straight face, you know, because there are so many times children are so funny. And you know, you're the person who needs, I mean, obviously showing humour and humility with the learners is super important, but there are times when you need to be the strict person when something, you know, it's so hilarious has gone wrong. But one that I remember particularly was the embarrassment on a child's face when he called me dad in class. I don't know if either of you had a child called you dad before or mum before in class. But it's just so funny. Have you got any little anecdotes like that, Ollie? Something that you could share at all?
I remember years back, it was in my first school at Alderman White in Nottinghamshire, that I set up to get the students enthused about science. I set up a kind of American style science fair, and I'd invited everybody in, got the head teacher to come along, an SLT, and it was due to happen after school, so it was all done and dusted, no problems. I remember I got kind of pulled out in the middle of a lesson by the head teacher at the time, who said, can you explain to me why there's a flatbed lorry outside and they've got a delivery for you with your name on it? And essentially one of the students, without telling anybody, decided to build a trebuchet with his dad that was like 10 foot wide by I think about 15 foot long, and wanted to set it up on the school playing field. So it's like totally random event like that, and that was in my first year of teaching, and you just can't be prepared for something like that. But the fact that they'd gone to that level of effort and detail, it's stuck with me ever since. It was just like, that wouldn't happen in an office.
Like, that's humongous. I remember going to Warwick Castle and seeing them, actually fire off a proper trebuchet. And the sort of, you're the physicist, Ollie, not me, but I mean the energy involved in creating that momentum to fire something that far. I mean, the learning in that must have been huge. But oh my goodness, a flat lorry rocks up in the school.
Well, we kept it on the playing field for a little bit, and the lab tech ended up making a sort of dummy smoke bombs for it, and we were firing them across. The science lessons that week were insane. They were just insane. It was so much fun.
That's amazing. What about yourself then, Sarah? If we're sharing ours, have you got one you can share with us?
Oh gosh, I've got loads. A lot of them involving school trips actually. Vomit on a coach is always one. So when you passed a bag from the back of the coach, miss, can you just, no thanks, don't look inside it anyway. There's plenty of those stories as well. Wasps in classrooms, always, or fire alarms going off, just, at the most inappropriate times as well.
Oh, okay. All right, Ollie, I think you've got the next question for Sarah, don't you?
Okay, I do. I'm going to kind of jump ahead a little bit. You're about to launch a new version of your book, and it's got a specific focus on Irish teachers that are new to the profession. And out here in the UAE, we're blessed to have a very large community of Irish expat teachers. So it's obviously going to be of huge interest to that community, as well as the rest of the teachers out here. Could you kind of share what the key differences between the two versions of the book are, and then where teachers can get hold of a copy?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I did my degree actually at Queen's University in Belfast, and my family are from Donegal in Ireland, which is where I actually edited this book. And a lot of the book has done quite well. You know, it's quite popular, and lots of universities are using it on their reading lists and lots of teacher training courses. And a lot of Irish teachers have got in touch to say that they'd enjoyed the book. Would it be suitable for their friends training in Southern Ireland, in the Republic? And so I got together and had a little look through. And I noticed that actually, while there are some differences between the training programme in England and the training programme in Ireland, most of the fundamental skills and ideas and strategies are universal, not just to Ireland, but across the globe. So we've got some brilliant new additions to the book as well. And how could we publish a book about what they didn't teach me on my PGCE without including a whole chapter on what they didn't teach me about teaching during a global pandemic? So that's definitely one to look out for. And I have to say a big thank you to Zoe Elder, who's written a fantastic piece for it, and Mary Myatt as well, has done a fantastic new forward for the book as well. Sorry, the question was about what's different about the book as well. So we've got lots of new perspectives. So some teachers in Ireland find that they're, you know, highly qualified, highly experienced, very passionate, but find it challenging to find employment in Ireland. So there's a little bit about that. There's actually a narrative as well about working overseas and the many benefits to working over in the Middle East. So we have a teacher from St. Christopher's in Bahrain has written a fantastic piece for that for us. Thank you very much. But I really do think what's come through from both books actually is just those universal ideas. It's almost like teachers passing on the baton to the new generation of teachers and saying, this is one thing I really wish somebody had have said to me many years ago. That's quite good.
Brilliant stuff. So where can teachers who are teaching in the Middle East sort of go to try and find where they can get a copy of the book from? Where is it available on Amazon.ae or other retailers?
Well, it's on the UK and America at the moment, but we're going to get it put on to Amazon.ae shortly. So as soon as it should be released.
Brilliant stuff. Well, if you're not following Sarah already, please do follow Sarah. I see her tweets multiple times daily, not always on her staycation, but please do follow Sarah, and she'll be able to sort of update you more as to where and when you can find that on Amazon.ae and other places you better get that from across the region. Thank you to Sarah for taking time to have a little chat with us. Please do stick around, Sarah. Want to say thank you to our viewers this evening. A long-suffering, not really, but a long-suffering viewer, Al Kingsley, has done a bit of a shout-out to us, wishing us good luck for this evening. So thanks for joining us this evening, Al. I think it's now time, how we're getting through the show, Ollie, to bring in our next guest. Our next guest, are you ready? Have you got the slide deck ready? And look at this, here we go. I'll add that to the stream.
Not our first rodeo.
Yeah. So our next guest is Kat Howard. She is assistant principal, founder of Lipdrive UK, and she has authored 2 books. And hands up, I've only read the one, which is Stop Talking About Wellbeing. In fact, here's my copy here. So she's got a new book coming out. I think it might be out right about now, which I'm sure she'll confirm with us in just a moment. Called Symbiosis, which I'm sure she'll have plenty to sort of share with us about during the course of the show as well. So please give a big thank you and welcome to Kat Howard as we bring her in right now. There we go. Hiya, Kat.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to get back to school tomorrow.
Are you back into school straight in with the children, or are you having some inset training before that? Or how's it?
Yeah, so we're having we've got kind of a staggered approach for the kids coming back. We've got inset tomorrow. We've got a really exciting day of coaching training for all of the staff on the Wednesday, and Year 7 will have a couple of days on their own. Everyone should be back by Friday. So yeah, really exciting week.
That's great. It sounds action-packed as well, that. Sorry, Mark, you're going to say something there.
No, sorry.
No,
I wanted to ask you what the focus was for your inset day. Actually, this isn't a on the script sort of question, but I'm really interested because schools, it's completely different. Things have been bonkers since March 20th in the UK. And obviously, while this is a UAE-focused show, we've all experienced similar issues around remote learning and all these different things. What are you looking at as a school, as some of your targets for sort of coverage on your inset day, if you don't mind me asking?
So we're kind of on a journey, Justin. So we kind of the process that we've been, or the journey that we've been on, we're now far more focused on subject level CPD. So I'll talk about it in a little bit more detail, but we've handed over a great deal of time, not just to inset day, but over the course of the year for subjects to really spend, a good 12-hour chunk of the directed time will be given over to departments to really focus on subject knowledge. So that's quite a large proportion of our time for inset, and the other focus is so we'll be doing some short online sessions, so via Microsoft Teams. I know I've bent your ear as well as many other people using Microsoft Teams over the last few months to get my head around it, so that I can make sure that our CPD provision is as strong as it could be in real life. And then the coaching will be running in small group training, but the coaching that we're providing for staff this year, or the coaching training, is really in alignment to our performance management. So our performance management policy is being kind of remodeled this year, so that we very much focus on bespoke CPD for staff. They're formulating their own goals for the year, what they want to work on, and then line managers are being supported with coaching training to have those conversations to make sure that there's a real focus on staff-centred CPD this year. So yeah, it's really exciting.
That's cool, and I love the fact that you sort of explained it and then went, so that, because often there's lots of inset, and I live a lot of inset myself, and often that's the conversation which is missing. It's, well, why are we having this inset? You do, well, so that, and it sounds really, really well thought out and clear as to the reasons why you're doing that. Thank you for sharing that, Kat. Thank you. Over to you, Ollie.
I wanted to actually sort of go slightly off script there and just ask about how you're going about coaching within your school, because it's such a valuable tool that we can use to upskill everybody across an organisation.
Definitely. I mean, I've had coaching, professional coaching, for the last 3 years now, and without sounding too, grand about it, it's definitely changed my life professionally. I was coached all the way through setting up Lipdrive, and it's had a really powerful impact. But I think it's very much, as Sarah was saying, if we think about relationships being at the centre of everything that we do in schools, I'd say everywhere really, but relationships are really important in schools because of the way that school systems work. But also that continual improvement that Sarah was talking about as well, that we should be constantly looking to get better. There's no end point to teaching as a profession. So I think managing people's performance against data doesn't necessarily measure what we want to get out of people, which is this continual reflection and improvement, and engaging with our subjects. I'm never going to know everything that I need to know about English ever. I'll die and there'll still be something that I don't know about Shakespeare. And so it really is creating the conditions to make sure that teachers can reframe their professional development as that continual improvement. And coaching is a really powerful way to do that, I think.
I completely agree. I mean, I'll do a big shout out to an old colleague of mine, Zoe Elder, who's full on learning on Twitter. She coached me for a good few years when I was working in one of my previous schools. And like you said, it completely transformed how I approach things, my interactions with others. It allowed me to develop and grow far beyond where I thought I'd be able to. It highlighted to me that the things that I was feeling really nervous about were actually more about myself and my own, inhibitions than anything else. I can genuinely say, I mean, I know that there's been a whole number of things I've done in my career that have led me to where I am now. But I would never be able to do many of the things that I do now if it hadn't been for the coaching I'd received from Zoe. I mean, she's a legend, and if you haven't read her book, Full On Learning, it is also awesome. But I'm a huge advocate for it as well, and I'm guessing you are, Ollie, as well, with a hat tip to your Twitter handle there.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that, when I first started teaching, I was really lucky that I had a great head of department that kind of showed me the ropes. And, if a book had been there to sort of read and give me that guidance, like we have, from our guests now and the vast array that we've got, then, the story would have been different, I think. But I just think it's such an important, pivotal part of growing people.
Yeah,
you know?
I think particularly with
said
school environments,
it links into everything.
Yeah, when you've got school environments where we have got that necessity for accountability from a national picture, but at the same time we want to really focus on growing people and investing in people, I think coaching is a fantastic way to keep that focus on people-centered development, I think. Yeah,
it comes back to the idea that Sarah's talking about as well, about kindness, and you've got to have that kind of whole school, whole system mindset, I think, to ensure that kind of ongoing development does happen, and you don't leave it to chance, because I think that can be a danger of something like that. And you have to remember that ultimately we're all in it together.
Mm-hmm.
That for me sort of resonates to something that I read in your book, actually, Kat, which was something you'd picked up from Sam Strickland. He said if somebody emailed him which sent an email that had to be like more than like two sentences in, or more than 2 lines, then he wouldn't bother replying to the email. He would actually go and speak to the person, because if it was important to have that much text in the email, it was actually worthy of an actual face-to-face conversation. And that goes back to mindfulness and being kind and developing those relationships. And relationships are really hard to foster. It is the hard yards and things over time and things. But we have gone completely off piste. I mean, we all know who you all are, but guests don't. Kat, would you mind just giving us a brief outline about who you are, what you do, where you come from?
No, not at all.
It's not blind date.
I've just come to chat for half an hour. I'm not even a teacher. No, I'm kidding.
Great initiative, Kat. So please, can you share, a bit more about where people can find more about you, what you've been up to, your experience, all that sort of stuff? Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem. So I came to teaching quite late. I worked in the financial sector. I kind of oversaw recruitment and retention for a leading high street bank for quite a while, and recruitment and retention were kind of my area of responsibility, which is probably what kind of ticked away in the background and lead up to writing Stop Talking About Wellbeing. I'm now assistant principal at the Dustin School in Northamptonshire. I oversee professional development for staff. I assist with QA of the curriculum. I oversee our ICT and NQT provision this year, which I'm really excited about, and I'm also strategic lead for English as well. So that's a little bit about me. I'm author of Stop Talking About Wellbeing and Symbiosis, which is hopefully going to be out in about a week or so. It's really exciting, right. Which is co-authored with Claire Hill. So
yeah. How did that come about, that relationship with you and Claire, to write that book?
It's funny, and it is Twitter, so it's one of the many wonderful things that have come out of Twitter. Yeah, I met Claire probably looking at about 3 years ago, and we met in London this week for lunch, and we were trying to work out the last day that we didn't speak to each other. We were having a lot of conversations around, the similarities, the overlaps within our roles in our specific contexts, and how she was doing something and how I would approach it. We'd often exchange ideas and chat through stuff. And then when I wrote Stop Talking About Wellbeing, I was talking through my ideas with Claire, and I said, I want to talk about curriculum, because there's this real intrinsic link between curriculum and teacher purpose, and curriculum and wellbeing, and I don't quite know how to unpack it yet. And I had so much to put in the book that I kind of put it to one side. I actually interviewed Christine Council and said I want to explore this link, and then just kind of parked it and said I'm not quite there yet, I haven't really thought it through. And it was through conversations with Claire that we kind of unpacked the ideas that we wanted to talk about within Symbiosis. And then from that I was like, please will you write with me? And she's like, but I'm quite lazy, and you'll workhorse me. And we came to a happy conclusion, and now she's as much as workaholic as I am when it came to that book. But it's a really nice experience to co-write with somebody, because we were coming at it from completely different angles, completely different experience and walks of life, through our professional careers, and yet at the same time finish each other's sentences and have a lot of brain twin moments. So it was a really nice process. It was actually really, and I don't think many people say that about writing a book, but I really enjoyed every step of the way, because of the fact that I was doing it with somebody else. So yeah, it was kind of born from Twitter.
Oh, cool. So interesting to know. Just got a question here from, a comment here from Nemish Lads. I'm guessing it's Nemish. Just doing a bit of a shout out saying both of your books are outstanding. And looking forward to the release of the new one for you, Kat. So thank you for joining us, Nimish, this afternoon or this evening. I guess you're not in the Middle East. So thank you for that. Next question. Louise Cass has also commented as well. So am I. Thank you very much. Next question for you, Kat. Teachers who use social media, particularly teachers of English, and that's how I sort of got to know you through sort of conversations around English and teaching of English. But I've seen your work around Lipdrive UK. Can you share with us a little bit about Lipdrive UK? I guess it's not just limited to for access for teachers from the UK. I'm guessing it's more about teachers of English. So could you share us a little bit about that and how people might be able to get access to it and how it came about, what it is, or that sort of thing? And then perhaps a little bit, one of my favorite hashtags, and Twitter's an amazing place. I share about it being like the best staff room in the world, right? But and it is for the most part, if you can avoid some of the mood hoovers that are there sometimes. But one of the most powerful hashtags that I've seen over recent years has been the hashtag Team English. And it is there's been some fantastic sharing and awesome teachers really coming together to support each other in lots and lots of different ways. I know you've been heavily involved in all of that as well. So could you sort of tell us a bit about Lipdrive and a little bit about Team English as well? Is that okay?
Yeah, no worries. So Lipdrive was kind of born out of, I became literacy coordinator in a school, and literacy coordinator is a really weird role within a school because nobody else does anything like your job. You're kind of this sole, put on this pedestal, go and sort out literacy, crack on, and there's nobody else to kind of bounce ideas around. It's a really odd role. And so I just kind of reached out on Twitter and said, somebody else do this job in their school, do you want to share some stuff? And set up a Google Drive. And then that became too big, so we moved over to Dropbox, and that became too big, and then it was like, this is this massive cumbersome thing. And I kind of went on my second maternity leave and was developing Lipdrive from Dropbox and getting up to 50 emails a day saying, can I have access to Dropbox please? And it became this full-time job in itself. So I was like, how can I make this more manageable, not just for me, but actually more accessible and useful for other teachers, for other English teachers? So I developed a website while on maternity leave, from WordPress and kind of watching countless YouTube videos because I'm an English teacher and definitely not a web developer, and created an online platform where people could share knowledge-driven resources, really high-quality resources, off the back of the conversations that they were having on Twitter, but also to provide an outlet for those teachers that aren't on social media. There's a massive amount of teachers that it's just a slither of our community that exists on social media, to make sure that there was somewhere for those people to see and share best practice. Really handy. We now run a mentoring program. I think we have about 300 people taking part this year. It'll be our third cohort on the mentoring program, so that's really exciting, to act as a support mechanism for English teachers. We normally run regional CPD events, subject knowledge driven events, to really kind of build those subject communities locally. Obviously lockdown and the current guidance means that we're kind of re-looking at what that will look like. During lockdown, we delivered weekly CPD online sessions kind of that ran every Saturday morning. But it really is, it's that double-edged sword, or that kind of double whammy of developing subject knowledge, being really, really powerful in developing subject experts within the classroom, but also building those relationships both at regional level and a national and international level as well. So we're now at, I think it's 17,000 members worldwide. We've got members in just about every country there is, which is absolutely amazing. We're at www.lipdrive.org.uk, so you can find us there. There's a great deal that's that's available, just open access without signing up, and then there's a membership process as well. Team English, I mean, I think English, I'm sure Sarah will back me up here, but English teachers, we really are our own breed, and that's why it's the best hashtag going. And I think you'll struggle to find a better subject. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased. I constantly have arguments with my head, Sam Strickland, about whether history is better than English, and he almost changed my mind, I think, for about 8 seconds, and then I realised how wrong he was. I think the wonderful thing about Team English is the fact that it doesn't belong to anybody. It's just a community. It's just bringing people together, people supporting one another, people having that kind of immediate outlet to be able to have conversations. Some of the conversations that we've had around literature texts on Twitter are just brilliant. You think these characters are real life human beings, some of the debates that you get pulled into. But it really is. It's such a fantastic community. Nikki and Becky, Nikki Carlin and Becky Wood, who kind of run the Team English account, and conferences have come out of Team English. The Team English National Conference went online this year, and Caroline Spalding did an amazing job, and the team that helped her out with that. But it is just a really amazing community to be a part of, and so many people within that community have helped me and supported me over the years that I genuinely don't think I would be the teacher that I am without Team English. I really don't. So it's a really powerful thing, I think, to have a subject community like that.
Can I just say as well, I love the way how relevant the resources are. So, back in the old day when we first started teaching, you'd pull out an overhead projector with an old text that you'd be annotating. But I love the way everything's up to date, and it's kind of experienced teachers, new teachers all jump in and support one another. It's great.
Yeah. And because all of the resources for Lipdrive are QA'd, and so you see, it's really interesting to see the evolution. You see a resource has been shared online, and then they'll upload it to Lipdrive, and then somebody else will take it and tweak it and adapt it, and you can see even just the fonts, remains the same, but you see the way that something grows or evolves or adapts for people's classroom practice, and it's a really nice process to be part of. I feel very honoured at the team that we've got now for Lipdrive and supporting Lipdrive. It's lovely. So
it's just a fantastic story, I think, Kat, to be honest, of which you should be rightfully very proud of, to have conceived and got to the stage you just at. I remember us having a conversation when you were just like, I'm at this stage, but I don't know what to do next.
It's too big.
I mean, it was already a fantastic and phenomenal resource, but just how brilliant is that? I mean, that and teachers get a bit of bad press, and certainly during lockdown, it's not been the best of times for teachers. But what profession, has a grassroots organisation like Lipdrive that produces all these different resources for teachers that, like I say, QA'd, developed, and got to the stage that it is now, with so many members involved and people giving their time so freely, and it's a fantastic story. I don't know if it's my place to say this, but thank you so much for all you do behind all of it, because I know how hard you've worked, and you've done that in a way which has been inspiring for so many young women as well. I remember seeing, I think it was Anne Moroz, who tweeted a photo of you presenting with your child. I forget what the event was. You'll better tell me. But you've been an absolute role model for young women in the profession for such a long time. So when I said it was a privilege for me and Ollie to have you on the show tonight, it really is. So thank you so much for giving it your time and sharing that.
I'll take you young any day of the week, Mark. So I think that's the first time I've been called young in quite a while.
There you go. I'll just move my camera for a second while I brush a bit more. Ollie, I think you're up next for the next question for Kat.
Yeah, just on that idea then, that sort of thread about community. Your first book, Stop Talking About Wellbeing, you've got the strapline kind of hints to more. The book is essentially about approaches that we can use to reduce teacher workload in the profession. Could you share a little bit about the story behind the reasons for the title behind the book, and then a couple of approaches that are pragmatic, that teachers can actually explore themselves to reduce their workload?
Yeah, I think everybody thought I was being really combative. I remember first releasing the cover for it because I designed the cover because I'm a massive control freak. So obviously that was going to be mine. Yeah. Everybody else. But when I first, and everyone was like, "What do you mean? Stop talking about wellbeing. Wellbeing's really important. It's fundamental." And I was like, "Oh no, it's tongue in cheek." Okay. But I think that wellbeing is, I think historically sometimes, not just in education, generally society, in society, we talk about wellbeing as a process when actually it's the outcome of all the things that we do. So if we're thinking about how to improve conditions for teachers in schools, we need to think about workload. So if you're not in a position to tell me what makes me feel better or relaxed or less anxious about something, that's very bespoke to the individual. But we can actually take really pragmatic approaches, and to reducing workload in schools, so that teachers are able to not work 12, 14-hour days. So we're not seeing that 60-hour week, rocking around in the media that we know that teachers are working. I think that there's so much that can be done by the individual teacher or by a senior leader looking at policy and processes to reduce workload and make it more manageable. In the book, I try to talk with that kind of dual narrative that, as a senior leader, you could be thinking about these things, but actually as an individual teacher, you do have autonomy and you do have an element of control over your workload. We should see that 1265 not as a target. I mean, when I came to teaching and somebody told me that there was a number of hours that I would be working over at the beginning of the year, I'd get a timesheet for the entire 12-month period, and how exactly that time would be allocated was just mind-boggling. And also then to find out that, oh no, actually it's not 1265, you'll be working far more than that in the reality because of marking and and admin and everything else, that it just blew my mind. So I think when we're thinking about pragmatic strategies and solutions as an individual teacher, I think we need to think about kind of two things. It's the operational side of things. So where is my time most being taken? Where is my time most being taken up by what kind of tasks and what kind of roles, and how can I be a bit smarter with how I use that time? So if you're working until 10 o'clock at night, you are not creating your best work. The amount of times as an NQT I stayed up trawling the internet for resources or making stuff or writing stuff, you look at it the next morning and go, what a pile of rubbish that is, because it wasn't my best work, because I was running on zero sleep. And I say to ITT, I say to trainees, I say to NQTs all the time, get a decent night's sleep, because I tell you what, you can walk into a classroom, your subject knowledge, your craft. If you walk into a classroom after 8 hours sleep, imagine what a fantastic teacher you're going to be. Then don't worry, I've picked this up from the internet, I've not given it a good read through, and trying to deliver something that isn't your own. Sleep is honestly, I talk about, I'm particularly craving sleep because my 1-year-old does not, he doesn't believe in it. But sleep is one of the most important ways that we can have a look. The other strategy I look at within the book is whole class feedback. Greg Thornton has actually done an excerpt within the book that kind of unpacks that in more detail. But that was an absolute game changer for me when we moved, because we trialled it within English, the department I was working in at the school at the time, and then rolled it out across the school as a whole. And I think that sometimes in teaching we view things that are easier as corner cutting, that they might somehow not be doing the job that they're meant to do, because if we're not working really hard, then it can't be good, when actually some of the best ideas are the simplest ones, so within the book I look at various strategies that can make sure that we're reducing workload, reducing teacher time that is being spent on other stuff, and actually how can we focus our teachers on teaching, talking about teaching, so having those conversations with other people about teaching, or thinking really hard about their teaching, because the more time they can spend connecting with what they came into teaching in the first place, the better they're going to feel about coming into work every day. I mean, I've spent you know, I've worked in some roles, and I'm not an advocate for working 1 million hours a week at all, but I've worked in some schools where I've worked quite a few hours, and I've worked in some schools where I could walk out at 3 o'clock every day. And actually, in the school where I've worked more hours, because the hours have been better spent, I've had better conversations, I've had amazing CPD. I've actually enjoyed work. It's spending more time at work than walking out at 3 o'clock every day, feeling pretty disconnected with what I'm doing. And I think that is important. I'm not encouraging that people work their stuff into the ground, but just think about how that time is being spent is really valuable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And some of the things that, you know, I'm obviously an advocate for using technology with my sort of moniker and all the rest of it, but it's not about the bells and whistles. It is about, you know, the aggregated small little wins that you can use to sort of tweak practice and help you be that little bit better at what it is that you do. I want to jump into, I'm just mindful of the time, sorry, Kat. I want to jump into next question. And we had quite a bit of a giggle at some of the stories we shared before when we were talking about things from Sarah's book. One of my favourite bits in the book is in the chapter titled Conversations and Connections. And a bugbear for many teachers is that staff all email. And I've got a quote here from the book where you talk about an email sent to all staff with a subject line, just for the teachers of Nathan Harris. And it's an email that's been sent to every single teacher in the school, not just the teachers of Nathan Harris. Now, we've all experienced, I was just checking my notes there, so I didn't see, but I'm sure all of you had that sort of wry smile where you've all experienced that sort of thing happen in your school. Have you got any other sort of teacher truisms like that you've come across that you could share with us?
But there's so many instances like that, isn't there, where you're doing something. I think that we are, as a profession, we are such an oddity because we have all of these processes that nobody can actually explain them. It's just because they've always been there. So it's like the directed timesheet. And I remember starting a job and, you know, and receiving that email and going, well, what's this for? It's like, well, this is how your time will be spent over the year. And I was like, I'll definitely do more hours than 1,265. And it was this really kind of oddball conversation. I think that that we all have that. I mean, it would be very much on our mind this week with the inset trauma of working out, you know, what smart casual is, because nobody actually nails it in any way whatsoever. And it's that, isn't it? Where I think there's a great deal of observational humour within the book, because I think that there are so many oddities to teaching, and some more serious ones in the fact that, you know, we all going into that summer period, and bizarrely we've avoided it this year because of lockdown, but we all go into that summer period not really knowing how to work out our days. And so if you meet up with any teacher in the holidays, you can guarantee that they're like, well, are we meeting in the morning or the afternoon? And they're still working in like session blocks with their arrangements that you're like, well, are we meeting for lunch and that will take us to 2 o'clock, or are we doing an afternoon? And you know, we are very odd creatures. I still daren't. I've been at Dustin for 9 months and I still daren't use any mug in the staff room because, you know, it's just more than your life's worth. Yeah, I think that we you know, it's so funny. It's like an educational version of The Office, isn't it? Working in schools, I think sometimes, and we all we spend a great deal of time, you know, pretending that we know what we're doing because things are so reactive. It's such a reactive atmosphere that you never really know what you're walking into. That's the fun of it, isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely.
The unpredictability of teaching. Well, it's like when my partner always goes, "What have you got on this week?" I'm like, well, to a degree, I can tell you, but you always know that if you have that same conversation on Friday, you've had a completely different week to the one that you thought that you were going into on Sunday. So yeah, it's fun.
It's the same thing if you teach like 3 Year 7 classes, you know, across different blocks. You're covering the same content, but those 3 classes are never ever the same, just because of the dynamics of the characters that you have across those 3 different classes. It's never the same. Yeah. Ollie, you got the next question for Kat, ready?
Yeah, sure. So one of the chapters in your book is titled People Before Procedures. And like many of the other chapters, you know, it resonates with that human-centric approach to teaching, learning, leadership within schools. And during the pandemic, we've seen the rise of things like flexible working, which has been highlighted in the chapter as a positive approach. And we've seen that outside of teaching as well. The world has still gone on. What kind of positive things in terms of kind of moving forward to the new academic year and approaches to support teaching and learning in a kind of hybrid sense would you advise viewers on?
Yeah, I think there's so much work that can be done with flexibility in schools. I think sometimes when we talk about flexible working, maybe previous to the pandemic, that it was viewed as, oh, okay, you're talking about part-time working, when, that is the tip of the iceberg when we come to flexibility. And hopefully this amount of time has shown us that. I think that there's a great deal that we can do with the online CPD offering. If we have a look at, some of the quality that has come through over the last 9 months, Lipdrive, CPD being one of those, I think there's so much that can be done, and it can be made so much more bespoke as well. We've utilised Microsoft Teams a great deal, as I said, for our CPD. We've also developed, and Claire Hill, who co-authored Symbiosis with me, has done a very similar thing with Google. It created a CPD platform that means that staff can access a variety of CPD sessions or provisions within that platform that have been written by individuals within the school, or delivered with by individuals in the school, so by the staff body, so that it's really high quality CPD, but at the same time delivered by people that are familiar and recognisable and understand the context. So I think there's there's an opportunity for that, a really layered approach to CPD now as we're going into the new year, that I don't necessarily view it as that we've lost something, this capability of, large conferences and things. Yes, of course, but actually it means that you've got an opportunity to select CPD that's really going to focus on your development as an individual, in alignment with a bigger school journey. But actually we can direct teachers to say that this is going to be CPD that you've got full autonomy over. I think that's pretty special to be in a position where teachers can choose their own pathway for professional development for the year ahead, and we've got the flexibility to do that, which is a really exciting time.
It's like a formalized way of what many teachers who've been using Twitter. I forget which one of you both mentioned it earlier. I mean, the teachers who use Twitter, it's a microcosm. It's tiny amount compared to the actual teaching profession, but it's what many of us have been doing for many years under our own belt. But this is a way of actually doing it in a more formal way, but supportive of actually being personalized to the sort of needs of the individuals in your school. I guess there may be some thinking there, what you're saying there then, Kat, and certainly as you mentioned what Claire's doing as well, about your new book, Symbiosis. And I did say in the question why I haven't had my copy yet, so I'll just leave that hanging there for a second. Not there
yet. I haven't got my copy yet, Mark, so
okay,
when I go, no, we're literally on the cusp. We've got a publication date of the 19th of September. Wow. That's the release date on Amazon. It's also available on Amazon as well. So yeah, when I've got it, you've got it, Mark.
So I'm only winding you up. But what I thought you might like to do, though, and if that's all right with you, Kat, because you'll certainly have some aspects you've written already, obviously. Could you read perhaps a short teaser extract from us to give us a flavour of what the book's about and all of that? Is that possible?
I'm gonna be really, really teasing and just give you a snippet, an edited snippet from the first paragraph, because honestly, I don't think I've ever been so emotionally attached to something I've written in my entire life. But yeah, definitely. So this is taken from the introduction, just because it really kind of sets the precedent of what the book is about, and this symbiotic relationship between the classroom and the curriculum. So curriculum is not a component of education, it is education. Start a discourse in your school, in any school, and it will lead you back to the thought, design and direction of the curriculum. It acts to inform every decision we make at every level, to ensure that the intention and purpose of schools remains clear. Whether that is due to function or beauty, our decisions now have curriculum at their heart. The more explicit focus on the curriculum is promising, but we need to ensure we are well equipped to tackle the task at hand. That's all you're getting.
No, that's great. That really does set the scene. Thank you very much. I'm really, really looking forward to reading it. So I got a lot from reading, well, both books actually, like I said, those teacher truisms as well that we sort of see, and we are a weird bunch as a profession. One of my most popular blog posts ever was one that I called 10 Things You Should Know About Teachers. And it's things like how the ability of teachers to carry 50 books whilst talking to a colleague, whilst drinking a cup of coffee, whilst walking from one classroom to the next. It's that sort of thing, whilst collecting your photocopying en route. There's all these things that we can do as teachers. I wanted to, we do have two sort of standard questions that we ask at the end of a show, which we'll come to in just a second. But before we do that, I wanted to sort of follow up from the conversation with Sarah earlier, because I've got a quote, a section in your book that I wanted to read, which is written by Corrine Latham. She's the head teacher of a primary school in Belfast called CV Primary. And if that's okay with you, Sarah, well, I know it's okay, we've already asked you, but I'm going to read a little section from Corrine's narrative inside the book here. My apologies. What a time for your children to FaceTime. I'm trying really hard here to turn the notifications. There we go. I'm back, and there we go. My apologies. It's in the chapter, What They Didn't Teach Me About Being a Superhero. And then she says, be the teacher. Be the teacher who is prepared. Be the teacher who shares values. Be the teacher who claps first, and be the teacher who listens. Be the teacher who laughs with the class rather than at them. Be the teacher who is the who cheers for the underdog. Be the teacher who radiates positive energy. Be the teacher who goes the extra mile. Be the teacher who is known for knowing them. Be the teacher who is generous in words and deeds. Be the teacher who is relentless in their pursuit of excellence. Be the teacher who inspired you to be a better version of yourself. Be the teacher who loves their pupils unconditionally. And be the teacher who is confident in the knowledge that you can change the world by the lessons you impart. She goes on to say to NQTs and RQTs, and I think this is something which is true for all of us. She says, enjoy your training, embrace the opportunities and learn from your challenges. But over your career, and this is what I think goes to the heart of what it is to be a teacher, for me at least. She says, over your career, you will create a legacy that will influence generations. And in my opinion, there is no better superpower than that. And so for me, I just wanted to add that. You might have been thrown, Sarah, because in our series of questions, you were maybe expecting that to be at the end of your little segment before Kat came on. But I thought, given the conversation we've been having about relationships and the impact we have as educators and all that sort of thing, I thought it'd be a really nice way to sort of wrap things together at the end. We do have our standard 2 questions, though. So, Ollie, do you want to go with the first one for Kat and Sarah?
Yeah, we'll go with the first one. Not including your own or each other's. What's your favourite book about education that you've read during your career to date?
Go first, Kat.
Without a doubt, I think Mary Myatt, High Challenge, Low Threat really changed the landscape for me. It really, brought to the forefront about people-centered leadership and how important that is and what that can look like, not just in education. So yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kat. And yourself, Sarah?
Mine's a recent one that's just been published, and it's by Stephen Lane at Sputnik Steve on Twitter, and it's about the pastoral curriculum. And it's actually very much about what Kat's been talking about this evening, that pastoral care and student outcomes are inextricably linked. And we focus a lot on curriculum and academic achievement. But as teachers in the profession, we need to invest in the pastoral care that we're providing for our children. I think it's a very good read, something to think about.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you both for that. My sort of final one, and unsurprisingly, what is your favourite app to use that supports your teaching or pupil learning? And I'll go to you first, Sarah.
Do you know something? I'm actually going to say EduTwitter. I think social media is fantastic, not just connecting now locally or nationally, but internationally as well. And the way that we're able to have CPD from our living room with children running around upstairs and in our comfy clothes on the weekend for free, it's absolutely exceptional. I think it's just lovely to meet educators who are like-minded, who are so passionate. You know, sometimes you do meet some teacher friends and they wonder why you're giving up your Saturday when it's your day off. But I love Educator because we really all do care. And yes, some people may have conflicting views, or there might be lots of paradoxes out there, but isn't that the very nature of our profession? So I'm all for social media.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. How about yourself, Kat? You got anything for us?
I am obsessively, I think I've definitely got a problem with teacher tap. The daily streak from teacher tap has sent me into, you know, monumental meltdown. But since lockdown, now that I've been able to establish a specific time of day to do my teacher tap, I'm flying for the first time ever. My streak is honestly, and the only thing that upsets me is that you then go onto Twitter and you've got people that are on a year streak, and I just don't know how to compete with that level. But yeah, I think that honestly, some of the, I mean, I reference teacher tap a lot with some of the data that I used when I was researching for Stop Talking About Wellbeing, but I just think it's brilliant. And if anybody got involved on the bullet tip versus chisel tip debate yesterday and picked chisel tip, I'd just like to say I don't think that we can be friends anymore. So knowing you.
Oh, thank you very much. Obviously, Ollie and I know what teacher tap is. What is, for those viewers who might not have heard of it, what is teacher tap?
Yeah, so it's lovely. You just get kind of 3 multiple choice questions every day, 4 teachers, and then that data is collated and you see the results the following day. They also do a weekly roundup as well, and there's a daily read as well. But it's all about the badges. It really is. So you get various badges for the different things that you do, whether it's the amount of daily tips that you read or your daily streak of making sure that you answer the questions every day. It's addictive. So.
That's awesome stuff. Thank you so much, Kat. Thank you both very much indeed for taking the time out to share with Ollie and myself this evening. It's been a real privilege to have you both on. Thank you ever so much. Ollie, did you want to say some words?
I want to know what everyone's teacher tap streak is now. I've just, whilst you were talking about it,
I can't tell you because it's not a year. So because it's not a year, I can't talk about it because it's not the best. However, I did actually get sent because my blog was featured 3 times, and I openly complained to Laura about the fact that I hadn't received a badge. I now have a teacher tap alarm clock that I don't know how to turn off. So at 1:30, if I'm on a Zoom call in here, you can see it. It's just there. If I'm on a Zoom call at 1:30, it will go off. And I was on my master's induction this week, and I had to pretend that I didn't know what it was because I didn't want to admit that the noise was me. And it does. I think it's the national anthem. There's lots of different options. So I just had to sit there and pretend that it wasn't me. And so everybody would have been in this breakout room wondering who the weirdo was with the national anthem in the background. Hopefully they won't watch this.
True story right there.
Busted.
Oh dear. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us both again, Kat and Sarah. Thank you, everybody who has taken the time to watch this evening. And if you're watching back on the replay, thank you for taking the time to join us. We are live each and every every Monday evening, 8 p.m. Gulf Standard Time, 5 p.m. British Summer Time, which will obviously change when the clocks go. And so watch out for that. But Ollie, we've got some news next week.
Ooh.
I've got some news, yeah. So our show next week is rather topical, and it's why it's important to be a research-informed school. And really delighted to welcome 2 members from 2 of the schools in the UAE. First guest will be James McBlain, Deputy Head at British School at Al Khabaira, and our second guest is Dee Saram, who's Deputy Head Learning and Teaching at Dubai College. And both of those schools are part of the UAE Research Schools Network. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the work that they've been doing and sharing across all of their schools. I think that really resonates with some of the discussions that we've had this evening around coaching and the kind of human-centered approach to teaching, learning, leadership, along with that idea of, and culture of growing each other and knowing thy impact, to quote a little bit of John Hattie there.
Brilliant stuff. So please do tune in again next week. Please, and I always get this wrong, but somewhere underneath us, there's a subscribe button if you are watching us on YouTube. If you're following us on Twitter, then please do go over to YouTube and subscribe to us there, and why not? But for now, I think it's time for, because we're a little bit over time. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, everybody. Big shout out and thanks again to Kat and to Sarah. But for now, thank you very much indeed. We'll say good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.